There are moments in history when a single image rewrites a nation's soul, not because it reveals truth, but because it implants a new myth. And if you don't know how myth works, you've already lost. The crime you watched, replayed, analyzed, consumed didn't stay confined to that moment. It became iconography. A symbol so potent, so emotionally charged, it rewired culture. It became law, identity, economy, because symbols are how the deep system programs the masses without using force. They knew the footage would burn through every screen in America. They counted on it, because pain makes men pliable, and symbols born from trauma become weapons of mass compliance. You've seen it happen before. The towers fell and the flag rose, and with it came surveillance, endless war, and the Patriot Act, all in the name of unity. But unity built on fear is just a cage in disguise. This footage, it became the new sacred image. Unquestionable, untouchable. Say the wrong thing and you're unpersoned. Hesitate and you're labeled. Doubt and you're destroyed. That's not justice. That's religion without redemption. And the high priests? They're not wearing robes. They sit in corporate boardrooms, government councils, Silicon Valley platforms. They speak in algorithms, policies, trending bans. Their temples are your apps. Their sermons are your feeds. And they didn't build this machine last year. This kind of control was perfected long ago in empires that rule by blood, fear, and divine narrative. Because once you convince a people that a symbol is sacred, you can do anything in its name. Silence dissent, erase history, rewrite morality. And when you protest, they already have the countermove. They let you scream into the algorithm. They let you chant in zones they've mapped in advance. Because they know, as long as you're reacting inside their story, you'll never write your own. But what happens when the spell breaks? What happens when a man sees through the icon and realizes who crafted it? Not the people, not the pain, but the priests of narrative, the psychological engineers who don't want change. They want ritual obedience. You were never supposed to see this layer. You were supposed to feel it and stop, but you didn't. You're still here. And now you carry a fire they can't put out. Have you ever wondered why some stories disappear while others never die? It's not justice that keeps them alive. It's utility. The crime that shocked a nation didn't just spark outrage. It sparked opportunity for movements, for networks, for politicians and power brokers who had been waiting for the perfect ignition point. And when the moment came, they didn't mourn. They mobilized. Funding surged. Foundations formed overnight. Corporate statements flooded in, all echoing the same lines, perfectly synchronized, like they'd been drafted in the same backroom long before the footage ever surfaced. Because they were. This is the part most men never see, the infrastructure of exploitation. Entire empires are built from tragedy. Tragedy gives a moral cover. And moral cover? That's the strongest currency in the world. It lets the powerful look virtuous while they expand control. It lets billion-dollar corporations speak like prophets. It lets politicians rewrite law while the people weep. But ask yourself, who benefits long-term? Who got the contracts? Who got the airtime? Who got the votes? Who got the funding? It wasn't the people bleeding in the streets. It wasn't the families torn apart. It wasn't the communities left hollowed and paranoid. It was the managers of chaos, the handlers of the moment, the smiling assassins in tailored suits. Because for them, this wasn't a crisis. It was a ritual harvest. Pain becomes profit. Rage becomes ratings. And fear becomes policy. They say, never let a good crisis go to waste. But that's not just a strategy. It's a religion of the elite. They need crisis. They create crisis. And when it comes, they're ready with legislation, with slogans, with icons to kneel before. You were shown a crime, but behind it was an industry, a machine designed to convert emotion into control. And unless you step back, far back, you'll stay a part of the fuel source. Angry, exhausted, numb, addicted to outrage, begging for answers from the very voices that installed confusion. But you're beginning to understand now, aren't you? The tragedy was real, but the narrative around it, engineered. And until a man can separate the pain from the puppet strings wrapped around it, he remains owned. Owned by symbols. Owned by handlers. Owned by the unseen. You ready to cut the cord? The deeper you go, the more uncomfortable it gets. Because the truth isn't just hidden, it's guarded. By shame. By guilt. By fear of being labeled. That's the fortress they build around forbidden knowledge. You weren't meant to question this story. You were meant to absorb it, repeat it, submit to it. Because if you dare to ask the real questions about power, about profit, about orchestration, you become a threat to the system's moral leverage. You go from citizen to heretic. And that's exactly how they've kept men silent. The crime you saw wasn't just used to enforce outrage. It was used to install a new moral order, one where emotion overrides evidence, where guilt is assigned by group identity, where questioning the narrative makes you evil. Do you feel that pressure in your chest? That tension when you speak the unspeakable? Good. That means you're still alive. Because only a living man resists the chokehold of collective hypnosis. The institutions don't care about truth. They care about stability. But not your stability, theirs. And every question you ask shakes their foundation. Why were certain voices elevated overnight, while others, who were actually there, were muted? Why did the media show you the same 3 clips, on loop, for months, while hiding the rest? Why were corporations so quick to donate, pledge, paint sidewalks, change logos, and then go silent? Because this isn't about justice. It's about leverage. Control the emotional consensus, and you control the battlefield, not the physical one, the psychological one. And while men fought over statues, flags, and slogans, the system passed sweeping reforms behind your back. Data collection, censorship tools, social score tests, and deeper alignment between corporate and state. This is the modern coup, not with tanks, with trauma. And the most dangerous part? Most men consent to it because they think they're being righteous, because the symbols said so, because the screen told them it was just. But justice without awareness is just obedience with a halo. So here's the line in the sand. Will you continue to worship the image they gave you, or will you see through it and claim your own mind again? This is a turning point. They don't just want your agreement. They want your participation. Because a true spell doesn't work unless you help cast it. And that's the final stage of control, when the masses become missionaries of their own manipulation. You've seen it. Ordinary men, once grounded, once skeptical, suddenly quoting headlines like scripture, repeating hashtags like hymns, policing their brothers in the name of truth, even though that truth came pre-packaged in the same system that's lied to them for decades. It's not their fault. When trauma hits, the mind craves certainty, and the architects know this. They offer simple narratives, moral clarity, ready-made enemies. No nuance, no context, just alignment or exile. You either say the words, or you're out. That's not awakening. That's initiation into a digital cult. A cult with no face, no temple, no God, but endless rituals of outrage. Rituals that feed the machine. Because every post, every chant, every emotional echo keeps the spell alive. You become the enforcer, the informer, the useful servant who thinks he's a revolutionary. But here's the dark irony. While you were marching, posting, screaming, the elite were laughing, not because they enjoy suffering. No, because they saw how easy it was to turn pain into programming. They didn't have to silence dissent. They let you do it. They didn't have to control thought. They let you report each other. And the reward? Validation. Likes. Temporary moral high ground. But all of it built on a rigged platform, designed to steer you deeper into division, not truth. You think you're fighting for justice, but the battlefield was designed by your enemy, and you were handed the script before you even knew there was a war. Understand this. They don't care which side wins, because they own both jerseys. What they care about is that you keep playing, keep posting, keep raging, keep bleeding energy into the ritual. But a man awakened stops playing. He sees the frame. He steps out of it. And when enough men do that, the whole illusion collapses. So ask yourself, are you still part of the spell? Or have you just started to see it for what it really is? There's something they never want you to notice. The moment you step back, even slightly, from the story, you feel it. A silence. Not peace, but a gap. A space where something should be, but isn't. That missing piece is the architect, the hand behind the curtain. Because every grand ritual, every televised trauma, every social upheaval has a designer. And the most dangerous truth in the world is that these events don't just happen. They're allowed. They're guided. Sometimes they're even built from scratch. False flags are not conspiracy theories. They are strategies, ancient ones, used by kingdoms, corporations, and governments to justify power grabs. Problem, reaction, solution. They show you the problem. They provoke your reaction. Then they offer their solution, which always means less freedom, more control, and more dependence on them. And it works every time. Why? Because the average man wants relief, not truth. He wants stability, not awareness. He wants the pain to stop, not the system that causes it. So they give him bandages, distractions, movements to join, petitions to sign, a feeling of participation without real sovereignty. But for the few who refuse the script, something else happens. You start to feel it. That presence behind the narrative. You can't name it at first. It doesn't wear a uniform. It doesn't sit in public office. But it moves like a ghost through every institution. It funds both sides. It writes the media playbook. It owns the platforms. And it profits every time blood hits the pavement and emotion hits the screen. You want to know why this crime was amplified, while others vanish without a whisper? Because this one served the ritual. It fit the agenda. It aligned with the mythos they needed to renew. And they need constant renewal because the system is parasitic. It feeds on fear. It drinks outrage. And it only survives if the population stays divided, disoriented, and emotionally exhausted. But now you're seeing it. Not just the crime, not just the tragedy, but the architecture around it. That's the first step out of the maze. Because the only men who escape are the ones who realize. The story was never theirs to begin with. You're not just waking up to a crime. You're waking up to a ritualized system of psychological control, engineered over centuries, refined by empires, and now injected into the digital bloodstream of every man alive. You were taught to believe that history moves forward, but the men behind the curtain know better. History doesn't move forward. It spirals. It returns. Same patterns. Same sacrifices. Only the costumes change. The crime that shocked a nation? It wasn't new. It was a repetition, an echo of ancient rites, modernized through camera lenses and live streams. You think public executions are gone? No, they've just evolved. Now they happen on screen. Trauma delivered at scale, injected into the minds of millions with one click. Because when you watch a man die on camera, something breaks inside you. A boundary dissolves. A belief dies. And into that void, the architects pour a new reality. A reality of fear, of guilt, of inherited rage and manufactured meaning. And while you process the horror, they rewrite the rules. That's the sleight of hand most never see. In ancient times, the death of a man could trigger a war. Today, it triggers a policy package, already written, waiting in the wings. It opens the floodgates for new language, new punishments, new powers hidden behind a veil of justice. And the people cheer, because the pain was real, but the narrative was false. Understand this. Pain doesn't justify anything until it's been understood. And the system doesn't want understanding. It wants reactivity. Because reactive people are programmable people. They'll demand their own chains if the script makes them feel righteous. But once you see this machine, you can't unsee it. You realize that every moment of national mourning is followed by quiet meetings, new contracts, digital censorship deals, and behavioral data extracted like oil from your reaction. You're not the audience. You're the resource. And once you know that, you stop feeding the beast. You stop reacting on cue. And you start asking the question that breaks the whole illusion. Who benefits from my outrage? Because the answer to that is who owns your mind. There's a reason your rage didn't change anything. It was used, harvested, monetized, weaponized. Because in this system, your anger is not a threat. It's a fuel source. It keeps the engine running. It drives the clicks, the shares, the protests, the algorithms, the legislation. You think you're rebelling, but the system calculated your reaction before you even saw the footage. They know exactly how many seconds of violence it takes to bypass your logic. They know how to fracture your nervous system. They know how to anchor your emotions to a specific image, phrase, or ideology. And once that anchor is set, you are no longer thinking. You are responding just as programmed. This is the science of neuropolitical engineering. It's real, it's funded, it's active, and it has one objective: to ensure that no matter how much you rage, you never actually rise. Because rising requires clarity, and clarity requires space, mental space, emotional distance, spiritual grounding. But they won't let you have that. They drown you in endless loops of trauma. They keep the story alive just long enough to shape legislation, shift the Overton window, and install new narratives. And once they've extracted what they needed, they bury it. They move on. Another tragedy, another camera, another cycle. And you, the viewer, the citizen, the man, are left drained. That's the game. It's not about justice. It's about voltage, keeping your soul in a constant state of charge and discharge, so you never have the calm to truly see. But you're breaking that cycle now, and that makes you dangerous. Because a man who sees a machine and refuses to play can no longer be herded. He no longer asks for permission. He no longer sees himself as a demographic, a data point, or a loyal servant of the algorithm. He becomes sovereign. And sovereignty is the one thing they cannot predict, control, or monetize. So here's what I want you to do. Right now, in the comments, write this phrase twice. I see the architects. I will not kneel. I see the architects. I will not kneel. Not for the algorithm, for your identity, for the shift happening inside you right now. Most men never realize how close they are to truth when they turn back. They feel the pressure, the resistance, the sense that if they go one step further, something irreversible will happen. And that's exactly what the system is designed to trigger. It's a self-defense mechanism. Because once a man crosses that threshold from spectator to sovereign, he becomes ungovernable by psychological force. He can't be baited by images. He doesn't bend to trends. He no longer submits to collective emotion. He becomes a threat. You're at that edge now. Everything in you might want to recoil, to go back to safe opinions, comfortable lies, to pretend that what you've learned here is just theory. But that's not possible anymore, is it? Because now you felt it. That hum beneath the narrative, that pressure behind the media, that orchestration inside the outrage. And the moment you see it clearly, you also see who was never really in charge. It was never the politicians, never the activists, never the talking heads shouting into the void. It was always the hidden custodians of perception, the class of individuals who don't need votes because they own platforms. They don't need laws because they write policy drafts before Congress sees them. They don't run governments because they finance them. They're the ones who benefit no matter who bleeds. And when a shocking crime erupts across your screen, they don't lose sleep. They see asset flow. They see cultural leverage. They see psychological momentum. It's not personal. It's mechanical. You are being moved, not by truth, but by intention masked as truth. But here's the paradox. They rely on your belief in the system to keep the system alive. And now, you don't believe anymore. That's the fracture they fear the most. Because if one man sees a ritual, others will too. One man breaks the silence, others hear it. One man becomes immune to their triggers, and 1,000 others follow. That's why your awakening matters. Because it spreads. It contaminates the hive mind. It shatters consensus. It collapses rituals built on mass emotion. And they cannot stop it. So don't turn back. Not now. You've already broken their spell. They thought you'd forget. They thought time would dilute it, that the pain would fade, that the footage would blur into background noise. But what they never counted on was a man who remembers, not just the image, but the pattern. And that's what you are now. Not a consumer of tragedy, but a seer of cycles. You don't just witness the moment. You trace its roots. Because every crime they showed you, Every national trauma wasn't just an event. It was a node in a web, a design, an ancient rhythm of shock and control. Ask yourself, why do the same archetypes emerge again and again? The martyred victim, the public outcry, the political savior, the radical fringe, the new laws. It's not coincidence. It's ritual theater. Every role is cast. Every emotion is curated. Every outcome is pre-calculated. And while the people chant, march, scream, and divide, the web tightens. Surveillance deepens. Speech contracts. Language gets filtered. And your children inherit a world with fewer choices than you had. This is a slow constriction of the human spirit. And it always begins with a crisis that feels too sacred to question. Because once they emotionally charge a narrative, it becomes protected, immune to analysis. If you critique it, you're cruel. If you dissect it, you're dangerous. If you ignore it, you're complicit. But that's the trap. They moralize the narrative so they never have to prove it. And while the world fights over surface details, the deeper structure is never touched. That deeper structure is this. Every engineered tragedy becomes an initiation rite, a way of absorbing you into a new belief system, whether you know it or not. You don't just watch the event. You get marked by it. Your worldview shifts. Your tolerance changes. Your fear response gets reprogrammed. You become, bit by bit, a more manageable subject. And that's the real crime. Not what happened to the victim, but what's happening to you, to your mind, to your autonomy, to your capacity to think clearly in the face of terror. That is the battlefield now. And only men who remember the pattern can fight it. So I ask you, do you remember? Or are you still hypnotized by the screen?